You are about to hear another inspirational message from Pastor James Cooper, lead servant and pastor of the Love Fellowship Worship Center in Rochester, New York. We invite you to visit with us for our 10 o'clock a.m. celebration service. We are located at 740 Marshall Road in the suburb of Chi Lai, New York. And now, my pastor, Pastor James Cooper.
Amen. But there's some things that we need to talk about, so I am so grateful that Tiffany, Minister Tiffany, who runs our children's ministry, she said, Pastor, this is something that's important for us to talk about. And I said, well, let's do it on Sunday morning. Let's not try to do it some other time. Let's talk about it on Sunday morning. Amen. And so with that, I'm sure they'll give you all their credentials and all that kind of stuff. And y'all know these folks. I mean, Tiffany's been around a long time, and Marissa's been around a long time since she was born. And Tam has been around a long time on our worship team. So I present them to you today.
Thank you, Pastor. As he mentioned, this is a really important topic, and we need to really have conversation about it. So my hope is that this will be a conversation that starts here but doesn't end here. So I would like to thank you as the audience for being here. We'd like to thank our virtual audience for being here as well. And we would like to thank our panelists. I'd like to introduce Marissa Cooper. And Marissa is a middle school special education teacher. And I'd also like to introduce Tamara Shepard. And Tamara is a licensed clinical social worker. And we are going to have a very important conversation today about youth mental health. But before we move forward, I want to just put out this disclaimer. Our wonderful experts who are here today are not speaking on behalf of their school districts. So we just want to make that clear. So I just want to start out with God wants us to prosper and be in good health. And a part of prospering and being in good health is not only you yourself, but those that are connected to you are well. They are doing good. And our young people are facing many things today. And we can see all around us that things just aren't the same anymore. Since COVID-19, there have been numerous challenges to our young people, and especially within the school system. We all know that we transitioned from what we know as school to something that some of us would have never imagined could be possible, remote learning. And that took away some of the social opportunities that our young people have. It kind of separated us, even within ourselves. For those of us who were quarantined, we all know that it took a toll. So today we want to have a conversation about youth mental health. And we don't want to just highlight the issues. We want to also talk about what we can do to help. Whether it's your child, your niece, your nephew, your grandchild, we all have children in our sphere of influence. And so we want to talk about that today. So Marissa, how do social and emotional challenges impact students' academic performance, behavior, and overall well-being in the school environment?
I just want to say first, thank you, Tiffany, for allowing me to be here. And it's a pleasure to speak before you guys today. I kind of want to break down the meaning of social and emotional, what that truly means. So social means interacting with the society around us, being social, emotional, that kind of thing. But social and emotional is really how we express our emotions and we relate to others. So I just want to give that clear definition of what social emotional truly means. And then you asked kind of three parts there. So academic performance, when students are truly engaged in school, and engaged meaning they have positive student to student and teacher to teacher, teacher to student relationships, they're more to flourish because they feel safer in their school environment. So those relationships truly matter. Behavior, so I think of social emotional behavior is how we interact with others and manage our feelings. So oftentimes the behavior that we associate with that, we consider it they're being bad. But sometimes it's just behavior. And we need to figure out what's behind that behavior that's causing students to act that way. There's always a reason that we do things. There's a decision behind it. So we may label kids as being bad, but truly it's a behavior thing that's going on social emotionally with them that we truly do need to seek out. And then overall well-being, this extends to the family, their friends, and the community at large. So they're learning social emotional skills in school that they're going to take to the community. So we need to be aware of what those things are, and also just coping with life. Things are happening around in this world. You think that our kids are not paying attention, but they truly do. They can see the stress in our lives. They can see that things are changing at home. So making sure they have those coping skills is truly going to be important in the school environment.
Amen. Thank you very much, Marissa. What you said was really good. It's not just what happens at school. It's going to translate into every area of our children's life. That's going to help to shape our future. So thank you. Tamara, do you mind if I call you Tam? How do social and emotional challenges impact students in the academic areas, performance and behavior, and overall well-being?
Okay, again, good morning and thank you for being here. A lot of the things that I see from the lens that I look at it is this concept of the learning brain and the survival brain. A lot of times when students walk into school, we expect them to be ready to learn. We expect them to be ready to pay attention, to not have any distractions, to be able to focus. And for those who are in that learning brain mode, that will work for them. They're open to feedback. They're open to receiving information. They're not in the vagueness of things, like they're ready. They have their learning caps on. But the more things that they tend to experience either at home or in the community, in their environment, that stress and tension triggers the survival brain. And basically what that looks like is that it's hard for them to see outside of black and white. They can't be in the in-between areas. It's difficult for them to receive feedback because everything is viewed as a threat. Because now I'm on edge, I'm anxious, I'm hypervigilant, I'm hyper-focused, I'm paying attention to a lot more things. So that's getting in the block of them being able to receive information. So they could be looking at you, you think that they're paying attention to you, but their brain is processing stuff at a different speed and it's closed off. So they don't want to be embarrassed, they may not answer questions, they may not ask you for help. But it's good to kind of know that just because someone is physically in front of you does not mean that they're mentally able to absorb everything that you're giving them. So that's kind of some of the academic piece of it, because they may avoid stuff, they may become withdrawn, they may be isolated. Behaviorally, you may see them start to act out. They may become fidgety, but sometimes people will say that they're moving around too much, or they may need to get up and leave out of the class. And sometimes they don't know how to ask for that help. They don't know how to say, hey, can you give me a few minutes to be able to go out in the hallway? They'll just get up and walk out. And it's not always because they're trying to be disrespectful or get into a power struggle or to have an issue. It's just in that moment, they need to leave that setting. And their overall well-being, our kids are carrying a lot. We're noticing them, clenching their fist a lot. They're tapping. They're doing a lot of things. There's a lot of muscle tension with that. So not only are things impacting them mentally, physically, it's taking a toll as well. So that's some of the stuff that we have been noticing in school.
Thank you very much, Tam. A different way of looking at it. Sometimes we do see the behavior and we speak to the behavior, but as Marissa mentioned, we need to look at what's behind that. Amen. Tam, I'd like to ask you, what are the most prevalent social and emotional issues you observe among students today?
I would kind of categorize that in the subjects of trauma. So not only do we have community violence that we're seeing, we have physical abuse, mental abuse, we have emotional abuse, We have homelessness, and a lot of times people think that because if you're not living in a shelter or living in a car that you're not homeless. That's not true, because under the McKinney-Vento law, even if you're doubling up with a family member, you are not having that steady housing. That's another traumatic experience that our youth are experiencing. Some of them have family members or caregivers that are utilizing substances, so that's something else that we see our students dealing with. And then kind of touching back on the community violence piece, we know how they react when they know that something has happened. But there's also a concept called anticipated grief, which means that it's the pre-loss or the pre-grief. So that if I'm anticipating something happening to someone that I know, a community member, a family friend, that also is something that causes trauma. And then there's suffocated grief, which is after something has happened, we tend to penalize or get people punished for the ways that they're expressing it, when it's their normal way of expressing that. But now, because we have expectations of what it should look like and how long it should last, we're imposing things on them. So it's like that grief, that pre-grief, and that suffocated grief are some of the things that our students are carrying a lot around.
Wow, that's big. Sometimes we think that they're little people or they're younger than us, so they may not be experiencing something. So that's a really good point. Marissa, what would you say are the most prevalent social and emotional issues you observe?
So I'm going to kind of break it into 3 categories. The first category I would say is anxiety, depression, and stress. So there's a lot of things in this world that are happening that are making our kids anxious, whether we think it or not. And over the years, social media has increased, and that is just unfortunately making it worse, sometimes better, but for the worse most of the time. And then depression. Our kids are just getting sad about seeing the things in the world, and they're just not sure how to react about that. And stress, they know that things are happening at home that they may not be able to help with. They can't handle that. So they're coming to school with those things, and then we're having to see behaviors that happen that we have to help with. Also the change in family structure, single parent homes. I'm now living with grandma and grandpa. I'm now living with my aunt who's got 15 kids, and I'm another one in there, and I get lost in the bundle. We've got blended families. We've got I use the term housing insecurity, which means another word for homelessness, or food insecurity. Sometimes they're not sure where their next meal is coming from, and that is a social and emotional stress. I love to eat, let's be real. And so if I don't know where my next meal is coming from, I get a little nervous. And think about that in terms of your academics, if that's what you're focused on. Or you have a little sibling at home. How are they going to be fed? That's an emotional stress that they're coming to school with. And you may think that they don't realize that, but they do see that. And then the last one is bullying and cyberbullying. What our kids are realizing is that things that they put out there may be cool right now, but they realize that adults are saying, you shouldn't put that out there. Why are you doing this on social media? And that's causing them stress because they're seeing people are the cancel culture, and they're worried about that. And then Snapchat, when I was growing up, it was disappearing, and now somehow it's staying there. I don't understand the whole technology behind it, but it's staying there. And our kids are realizing that because their friends are screenshotting it and sharing it with everybody. Everybody. Before it was like you had like a little bitty second to snap it on Snapchat to keep it. Now you can permanently do that, and things are getting everywhere. And our kids are getting terrified of that. And understandably so. As adults, sometimes we get terrified of that. But those are the stresses that they're coming to school with that are seeing in behavior. And, as adults, we have to kind of guide them in that and monitor their social media.
Amen. That's a really good one. Social media is something that some of us have never really experienced, not to the degree as our young.
I had
Yes.
AOL Instant Messenger. That was my social media growing up as a kid.
And now immediately, whatever you say, think, or do is shared immediately around the world in seconds. Wow. So it's really something to consider, and definitely checking your children's social media pages and checking in with them about bullying. As Marissa mentioned, cyberbullying is huge, and sometimes it happens under your roof and you don't even know what's happening, and they don't know how to express to you they're experiencing this. So having those conversations. It doesn't have to be a formal conversation, but just chatting with them each day to see what's going on is really important. Marissa, are there any specific age groups or grade levels where you notice a higher prevalence of social emotional issues?
So I had a hard time with this one because I couldn't just pick one, so I picked them all. So I'm gonna kind of break it down into age groups. So at preschool and kindergarten, that social anxiety, they're leaving home for the first time. As much as you're having social anxiety about them going to kindergarten, they have just as much anxiety because mom and dad aren't gonna be there for nap time or give me my lunch, and they may not be able to open my applesauce. You know, those kind of little things that we don't think about, they are thinking about that. And then emotional regulation with that. So my friend hurt me, I cannot run to my mom. She's not here like I normally am, like when my sibling is bothering me. So those emotional regulation skills are starting to develop in preschool and kindergarten. When we get up to elementary school, it's building those friendships. Who are my friends? How do I make friends? How do I keep them as friends? And then the academic pressure. They're starting to understand that grades sort of matter. And can I read or write? Can I do my math work? It really does matter. And then also the bullying starts to pick up in elementary school as well. Middle school, which I'm a middle school teacher. I love this age group, and trust me, it's not for everybody. Puberty, yep, that happens, and it changes things social emotionally. Body image, they're seeing things on the internet, they're seeing their friends, so we have to be careful of that. And also peer pressure. They're just seeing their friends do things, and they're like, oh, cool, I want to do that. Impulse control doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So they're making decisions, so we have to be aware of that. And then at the same time, they're also forming their identity and figuring out what their values and beliefs are. They really are. They're at that age where they can understand things that are changing and going on in the world. And then in high school, you've got the academic stress. They're like, I got to graduate. I got to get out of here. I got to either go get a GED, I got to go to high school, like whatever they're doing, they've got to figure it out. So that's the stress for them. Social comparison, and I don't think parents or society means this is bad, but they're seeing the posts that other parents are making about their kids that they may not be making. So we have to be mindful of that. You may be congratulating your child on Facebook for getting an A+, and their friend may not be getting that. So even just saying among your group of friends as parents, like, hey, you should post about your kids sometimes. Like, it's those things that make it nice. And it may not even be something grand, like they got, honor roll. It could just be, I got a good report card, or they were kind to someone and their teacher let me know. Those are the small things that build that character. And then also in high school, they're just confused about their uncertainty about like what's gonna happen. Like your parents tell you at 18, you gotta go. You just gotta go. So gotta go means what exactly? And then I don't wanna leave this out because I think this is important on group, because I think they're still under that umbrella of their parents, but it's that post-high school. College and university students are still kind of under that umbrella of that social emotional learning within the household. And so they're just struggling with, okay, I'm out, now what? No one told me that like my phone bill was a thing. Like no one told me that like if you don't clean it, it doesn't get clean. So they're struggling with independent challenges and also with finances. Oh, so if I do spend all my money, my bills don't get paid? Like they're struggling with those kind of things, and that adds stress to their life that then they're bringing home, and you're like, why is my kid acting different? But it's still those kind of things that we have to work with. And then it's just major life decisions. What college am I gonna go to? What career am I gonna get? Am I gonna change my major for the 5th time? And is that gonna upset my parents? And then just academic pressure with that. My parents told me they had 4 years and I gotta get out in 4 years, and I failed a class. So they're having those pressures, and all of those are great skills and things that we have, because when they get out in the real world, they're going to need them. But still, when they're in their post-high school life, they're still going to need that social emotional support, because they are coming home at Thanksgiving and things like that, and not necessarily living on their own. So make sure I mention that.
So it doesn't just end at the 12th grade graduation. There's that gap in between. And sometimes they kind of fall through the cracks. So it is important to support them. Tim?
The only thing that I would add to it is that this is also the time when we start noticing, I can't say one particular grade level, because when we go out into buildings, we're responding for K through 12, but we are starting to notice at the younger grades more mental health concerns that have been coming up. We have been noticing a lot more adjustment issues, similar to depression, but it's kind of when things are happening to them, within 6 months, and you start noticing like that sadness, them kind of being withdrawn in that isolation. We're noticing that. We're also noticing reactive attachment. So basically what that is that when you used to be able to go to them and console them and to provide them some comfort and wrap your arm around them and let them know that you care, they're kind of distancing from that. They're pushing away from it because that is how they're reacting to it. But then there's also the disinhibited reactive, which is kind of that time where they're starting to cling to people more than they used to. So this is the child or young adult who would kind of keep to themselves, but now there's no filter. Now whoever is paying me some attention, that's who I'm kind of connecting to. So you kind of see that range of it. And again, we're noticing the depression and anxiety. We're noticing that a lot more kids in the K-6 setting are doing more self-harm. So even though, again, we may not think that they're hip to it or recognize it, there is a lot of social media. There's things that we're noticing when kids are starting to wear hoodies a little bit more. When they're pulling the hoodies over their hands, they're covering up some things on their wrists. If they're wearing like a lot of bangles and bracelets on their arms, that's also another way that covers up. So it's kind of being able to pay attention to some of the changes that you see with them, because again, you may not think that they know these things or know how to do them, but they do.
Thank you, Tim. Tim, how do you identify or differentiate, I can't say it, make the difference between typical adolescent behavior and signs of a severe emotional or social emotional distress?
Okay. So between like the ages of 6 to 12, a little bit of like what Marissa was saying, that's when they're going through that industry versus inferiority stage, where they're kind of seeing if they're able to do things on their own. Are they able to be successful? And that challenge, if they're able to do it, then they feel productive. They feel like they can do some things. But if they can't, they may start to avoid stuff. They start to feel inferior when they're comparing themselves to their peers. So the severe side of that is that they become very avoidant with school. They become very avoidant with tasks. We kind of see them isolating themselves more. You might start to hear them verbalize like, I'm stupid, I'm not smart, I don't even care, I'm not gonna try. You start to notice those things. That's when it kind of raises a little flag like, okay, I need to talk to my child or my family member to see a little bit about what's going on, because it's one thing when you realize that, I need to work on this a little bit more, but when you start internalizing it and you start to avoid and you start to isolate, that's something that's not as typical. Between the ages of 13 and 18 is this identity versus role confusion. That's when they're trying to figure out who they are, how they match up and compare to their peers. Am I doing things at the same rate? Am I growing at the same pace? Am I dressing the way that everybody else is dressing? And then if they're able to figure out who they are and know who they are and have that confidence, then they're okay. But when they start to get confused about who to like, subjects to take, who to hang around, all these different things, that takes a toll on them. And again, that's where you might see that isolation, but that's also where you might start to see some of the self-harming. The interests that they used to have before, they now have decreased in that. They're not wanting to hang out with people. They're not always trying to be on their phone. They're not trying to go with that favorite aunt or uncle or family member. That's when you start picking up, because again, you're noticing that change. So those are some of the things that we tend to recognize is, again, things that we went through and the way that we reacted are very different than how our kids show it. The same coping skills that we had when we were able, to react a certain way, they haven't developed them yet. And sometimes because of what they're learning and what they're seeing, that's also what they're putting out. So just a little bit to kind of keep in mind.
Okay, thank you. And Marissa, how do you as a parent, how would I be able to know this is something normal?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of break it down into two categories. Can you tell I'm a teacher? And I'm like, there's this and there's that. So the first category I would say is a typical adolescent behavior. So mood swings are normal. Okay, so that happens. Challenging rules, getting argumentative, and some parent conflicts, they're trying to figure out who they are. They're not just trying to be disrespectful. They're trying to see what they can somewhat get away with, somewhat not get away with. They're trying to figure that out. Their lack of frustration tolerance, sometimes they don't grow out of that. But they're getting frustrated with things that you're like, that's a simple fix, and they're making a big deal out of it. Their withdrawal from family activities and more contact or more initiation of things with their friends. So, they may not want to hang out with their little sibling on a Friday night anymore, and it's, hey, I want to go to the football game. And that's part of being, that typical age group. Also lying, they're trying to figure out what they can get away with. Risk-taking, that comes in all forms. And so that's the normal, not the normal, but the typical things that we see. So some signs of emotional distress are related to that. From the school end, if you're getting more phone calls from your kids' teachers, there's probably something going on that you may want to look into. You have to remember, I'm a middle school teacher. There's kids that have, 10 different teachers. I may not know what somebody down the hall has called you and told you. So you may want to be aware of those things. Write down those phone calls that you get. Take them to their doctor to say, hey, look, I'm getting a bunch of phone calls about the same issue. Talk to them. Persistent and extreme mood changes. So these are the mood changes, and they're extreme enough that they're affecting their daily functioning. They're not able to get out of bed. They can't brush their teeth. They can't, the things that they typically would have done become more of a challenge for them. Self-isolation, so they're withdrawn from social activities for a prolonged period of time. This isn't saying, well, they just don't want to hang out with me. They're not wanting to hang out with anyone for weeks or maybe months. And ongoing physical complaints. And a lot of times we think that it's just a stomach ache. Well, look at the frequency of those stomach aches, because that's signs of anxiety and other things that are going on. So they may be complaining of, oh, my leg really hurts today. That might not. The body reacts to anxiety in different ways, and that might be a way that their body is reacting. So making sure that you're aware of those physical complaints. Excessive sleep, well, teenagers, they tend to sleep, let's be real. But, it's the excessive amount of sleep where it's like, dude, you got to get up. The decrease in appetite, I remember my brother just ate a whole lot. So a decrease in appetite would be a whole thing. Like you're noticing they're not eating as much. And us as adults, we do the same thing. Sometimes we get stressed out. We don't eat as much. And that's a sign to people. Have you lost a lot of weight recently? Sometimes that's a sign to people. And then the last one would be drastic changes in their personality that's affecting their behavior. So you may say, this wasn't my kid 6 weeks ago. And sometimes it can happen in just that short amount of time that it's like, that is not how I raised you. That's the time to take that pause and say, okay, where can I go to get help? Because I don't know. Or their friends' parents might be saying to you, hey, what's going on here? And those are the signs that you have to look for. And so that's where it's important that village is out there. So, there's things that we may say to parents out of love, and you gotta understand that we're not saying them to say, there's something so wrong with your kid. No, we're just trying to help them be the best person that they can be so they can flourish in society. We want the same things that you want. So those are things I would say.
Thank you. So before we end, I definitely want to ask a really important question that I think our audience might be wondering about. What role do parents and families play in the social emotional arena? And how can they support their young people? Marissa?
Yeah, so parents and families are an important part of a child's education. You guys may think it may just be, oh, I'm going to make sure that they get their homework done. It's a lot more than that. Yes, supporting homework and focus on learning and saying, oh, we can't go here until you get your homework done. Yes, that helps a lot, but it's also understanding and advocating for your child. So if you notice that something's happening at school, or your child's constantly coming home saying, well, this teacher's bothering me and this kid's bothering me, it might be time for you to go up to that school and figure some stuff out nicely. Setting realistic expectations. So a lot of times as parents, we're like, oh, nope, they're going to get straight A's. Not everybody's a straight A student. That's okay. So we have to set realistic expectations. And it's different for siblings that are at home as well. The expectation for grades may be different from me and my brother, but that's because we learn differently, and that's just how we are as children. Participate in those school activities. Volunteer to go on field trips, chaperone the dances, join the PTA, go to those board meetings, make it visible that you're there and that you care. My parents, my dad once a year came to volunteer on a field trip or a dance, and he was the coolest thing for that dance, and I thought it was really crazy. But he showed up and I knew he cared about my school. Like, yes, he traveled a bit, but I knew that he cared because he was there and he was showing up. So don't just show up when it's the quote unquote bad behavior. Show up when it's something good. Go to that football game and your kid goes, oh, my teacher's over there. Go say hi to that teacher. Say, hey, just want to let you know who I am. If you ever need anything, contact me. Love when parents do that. And then collaboration. If something truly is happening, call that school and schedule a parent-teacher conference. Do not be afraid to say, I need to come in there and I need to meet with y'all. We got to figure something out. Do not be afraid to do that. And you can schedule those regularly. Just call the school and just ask them how to do it. If they have parent trainings or parent nights, go to those. You may think, oh, I already know that information, or they've got 3 older siblings. I don't need to go to that. Go to that. You may learn something new, but you may also make a connection with a member of the school community that you didn't before, that you may need down the line. And the last thing is communication platforms. Keep that open communication. If something happens at home that you think is going to affect their behavior and their academic performance, please let the school know. It's so important that we understand that. You know, if I have kids who will come to school and tell me things and I'm like, did you tell your mom that? They're like, oh yeah, my mom didn't tell you? No. So if something drastic is happening at home, there is a split in the family. There is a death in the family. The sibling is going through a medical emergency, things like that. It's important for us to know because we can watch out for you. So another part of that too is if your child starts a different medication for whatever they may have, ADHD, ADD, anxiety, depression, any of it, let us know because that is going to affect your kid's academic performance. And we may just be calling you going, well, they're acting up again. Well, they're being disrespectful. They walked out of my class. But that could be because of a medication change. And I see that so often and I'm like, you're acting different. Oh yeah, my mom changed my meds. And it's like, oh, you know? So letting us know that things are happening at home truly affects how they're doing in school. So please let us know. If you think it's the smallest thing, the cat's in the hospital, we'll work with that. You know, like it can be something simple. You think that their brother broke their leg and that may not be a big deal, but that sibling may be stressed about how they're going to get around at school the next day. Who's going to be there when they get home? So those kind of things are truly important to let your school community know, and just email somebody at the school, one teacher, the principal, the assistant principal, the counselor, the social worker. Let somebody know that something is going on and what we can look for. You know your child the best. You truly do. They may spend a lot of hours at school with us, but you truly know your child best. So you may say to us, if my child starts doing this, this, and this, I need to know immediately. We will let you know, and we will gladly let you know. But you've got to open that communication with us because otherwise we don't know. And we welcome that. Yes, there are some times where you may be labeled the helicopter parent, but guess what? At the end of the day, you care. Yeah. And you showed that you care. You showed up at the events. You made those phone calls. You asked, hey, they got a bad test grade. Can they redo it? I don't normally allow that, but sure, why not? Because your parent contacted us because they care. So there's a different level that changes within that school community when we know a parent cares. So yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Marissa. Tam, can you tell us, in your opinion, how parents and families play a role in supporting their young people?
I'm going to list off some working assumptions that we should have about children until proven otherwise. Children want to have their parents be proud of them. They want to please their parents and other adults. They want to be accepted as part of a social group. They want to be active and involved in activities. They want to learn new things. They want to be surprised and surprise others. They want to voice their opinions and have choices. They want to make choices when given an opportunity, but they also want to make you proud. And one of the things that I like to always let families know is that children do well when they can. And when they aren't doing, it means that they're lagging a skill or they're lacking a skill to be able to communicate that to you. Another thing that I always say is that if a child can't tell you how they're feeling, they're going to show you. So pay attention to what your child is communicating to you, because it's not going to always be verbal. They're not going to always have the words or the language to be able to tell you that something is bothering them. Fair is not equal. So what you do for one of your children may look different than what you do for the other child. or the way that you see a school responding to support your child might look different than what they did for another student. To follow up on what Marissa was saying as far as keeping the lines of communication open. I know sometimes when you all see the school number pop up on the caller ID, that it's like, okay, I'm not answering this today. Some parents have even blocked the school number. But what I would ask is that if you change your phone number, let the school know. Because there are times that something could have happened medically, not even behaviorally, medically, and we're not able to get in contact with you all. And then we have to run out and do home visits, and then sometimes we found out people have moved. So we're not able to get in contact. So if there's an email that you want to be contacted on that you would like the school to reach out to, be able to have that, because it's nothing worse than having something occur where we're not able to reach a parent or a caregiver. And lastly, I would just say, just kind of be mindful of the things that we're modeling in front of our kids, because we think that because things stay in the house, that they stay in the house, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes the things that we might say when we're upset, they're saying. The things that we might do when we're frustrated, they're doing. So it kind of is that learned behavior that if we're expecting them to act a certain way or to behave a certain way, we have to model that. We have to say, okay, if I don't want you to react this way when you're frustrated, I have to be careful of what I'm saying and what I'm doing and what I'm showing, because it does come out. But also as parents, know that we know that you want your children to be better off than you were, that you want your children to be successful. It's not that people look at you negatively. We have those assumptions about you as well. So we just hope that you continue to know that you are important, your presence makes a difference, your advocacy makes a difference, but also your responsiveness does as well. If the school or somebody is reaching out to say, hey, we're noticing this, maybe you might want to get your student tested for this or get them checked out for that, follow up on it, because it's nothing worse than having a 6th grader at a 1st grade reading level when it could have been addressed in 2nd grade. So just kind of keeping that in mind. Thank you.
So one of our other questions was, how does a supportive school climate and positive teacher-student relationships contribute to the social-emotional well-being of students? Marissa?
So like I said before, those positive student-to-teacher relationships are truly important for their well-being. They need to have somebody that they feel connected with at school to really engage in their education. I know at my district sometimes that we will ask the kids, like, who do you feel connected to in this building? So that we know if they don't feel connected with someone, that we do find them someone that they can connect with. So if something does happen at the school building, they can say, go find Miss Cooper. She's my person. Don't talk to anybody else. I want to talk to Miss Cooper. So finding those good student and teacher relationships is good. So making sure that you are checking with your students, saying, how are things going in your math class with Miss So-and-so? And how's your ELA class going with Miss So-and-so? Asking how they're doing in those classes is truly important.
Thank you, Marissa. And Tam?
I think it's important for educators to know that you have to reach the heart before you can teach the brain. And a lot of times we're so quick to jump into academics. We're so quick to go with the lesson plan. We're so quick to do what's on the agenda and not being able to differentiate when we see what our students are needing. Checking in with them, recognizing if something has happened, or if we know that something has occurred in the community and a student hasn't been in school and they're coming back to the building, being there to be able to support them. So those are just kind of some of the things, and just offering them space, but offering predictability and being flexible. Predictable in the sense that I know that when I come into school, this is what my routine is going to look like. This is the structure of the class, but also knowing that, okay, my teacher supports me, so there can be some flexibility within that. But I also think that the schools also have to do a better job of communicating positive things to families, because it's overwhelming when you're already stressed, when you already have a lot on your plate, to keep getting these negative phone calls. So I think that calling for positive reasons, sending home a letter saying what your child did well, sending out an email letting you know that, hey, we recognize the positive things that they are doing. I think that that helps also with the social emotional support of students.
All right. And are there any questions from our audience? All right, if not, again, I want to thank our panelists for being here with us today. I think this was an amazing discussion. If you have questions, feel free to touch base with any one of us, because there may be something that you think of over the next week or in future. And please be here with us next week, because this is going to be a really good discussion, and you will be able to hear from young people. And I think it's important for them to hear, for us to hear their voice and what they're experiencing. So I invite you back next week, and I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for listening to Love Fellowship Worship Center in Rochester, New York. For more information about our church, like us on Facebook or go to our website at www.lovefellowshipworshipcenter.com. From the Love Fellowship Worship Center family, we pray that you will have a blessed week, and we hope you will listen again next Sunday right here on Our Spirit